Welcome to Driven, the Unscripted Success podcast, with your hosts, Mike Manino and Nariman Hamden, bringing you insights and stories on achieving personal, professional, and financial success.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Driven Unscripted Success podcast. Today on the podcast, we're interviewing professionals who are going to share their experience with you and how they got to where they're at today. And zooming from the beautiful island of Boca Raton, Florida, we got Paul Epstein. How you doing, young man?
I am doing fabulously well, thank you, and I hope you are too.
Better than I deserve. Let's put it that way. Paul is help me understand this. You were a teacher for a period of time, but you taught on computer science. Is that correct?
Well, I was in marketing for a number of years, but I was also involved in instruction and training in a variety of ways. And when I landed in LA, I found myself instructing students and others interested in the internet before it became a commercial medium. And then 2 years later, in '94, it became commercialized, and that's where I took off with this, and my career took off as well. I was involved in their interactive marketing services, program, and so I spent a good solid 2 years with them, and it was extremely useful in terms of what it helped me in my career. I've been in marketing since, many, many years, decades. I started out as a copywriter at Ogilvy and Mather in New York City, and then went client side for a number of years and bounced around after that, moved to Florida, set up a leasing operation down in Orlando and built and sold that. And then I moved to California and continued on building businesses while I was also working with others. So here we are today.
Nice. That's absolutely fantastic. How do you deal with taking risk in all of what you've done? Rolling the dice, has it really worked out for you, and how has it done? How has it worked out for you?
Well, it's for me personally, it's never been, that what you would say is, rolling the dice. I think the work that I've done has always been based on my own experiences. That was one of the things that I learned years ago. I will also say that, to your audience, I've been working since I was 8 years old, and I wasn't doing it for fun. I was doing it to help my family make money. And I started out 8 years old shining shoes in Brooklyn, New York, on the streets of Brooklyn. And I found myself making some money. My dad was in the Navy, and he taught me how to do a really cool spit shine. And so when it came down to it, I decided I wanted to do that. At 8 years old, I was making $10 to $15 a week. That's going way back when.
Yeah.
So I was always industrious as a kid. I used to clean out basements at 10 years old. I'd go to the neighbors and I'd ask them if I could clean out their basements, and then I would take some of what they would consider junk, clean it up, and then I'd stand outside my house. I would put two boards together and on top of some milk carts and clean it up, and I'd sell the stuff.
Nice. That's very ingenuitive back in the day.
And,
see, we were from the Great White North. We'd shovel snow for people, and it would snow out, and when it snowed, it was an opportunity for us to make money.
Yeah, well, you're going to laugh at this. I used to do the same thing, but then I realized that there was a lot of business. So my friends didn't want to go knock on doors. I was the business developer. So I go knock on doors, I'd give them the work, and we would split the profits.
You got the good end of the stick. Shoveling snow is not fun, my friend.
So, it was a lot of fun. I mean, but I must say that I started out at a very young age, and I just continued learning about being an entrepreneur. And as I grew older, I realized that working for other people wasn't where I wanted to be, because one of the things that I learned in my 20s was when I was working with Ogilvy, that they always were looking for talent, as he would say. The best talent he was most likely to find were amongst nonconformists, dissenters, and rebels. And I was always one of the three, or a combination thereof. And so I found myself in a very good place. I learned a lot about copywriting even before the word content was utilized, and I became very, very good at it. And then I was immediately promoted. Got to the point where I was recruited by one of my clients, and I went client side, and so had a chance to learn advertising, marketing, and also finance. So at that point, I was getting a lot of education in the real world. Fast forward to where we're at today. I'm a builder of businesses. My last business was in the higher education industry. It was one of those businesses that I started based on my own experience in career development. And for some of your audience out there, maybe you probably remember this, I'm sure, that back in 2000, the internet boom went bust. So there we were sitting with a lot of ad inventory and nothing going anywhere. And what usually happens when the economy goes bad? People's credit goes bad, or they wind up having to go back to school. So I decided to choose to work in that particular arena. So I found myself in the lead generation business amongst the colleges, universities, career schools, and trade schools, and started to build a business based on generating leads. But as I saw my competition out there, I realized that I just didn't want to do leads. I wanted to do something more in line with what people were dealing with at the time. And when you're displaced, you don't know what you want to do. And some people will just literally raise their hand and say, "Oh, I want to be administrative justice. I want to be an accountant, or they want to be a nurse." Well, they don't know that. They just choose something based on what they're reading. So we started doing career development, giving people free advice through Myers-Briggs, Strong Campbell, interest inventory, and several others. And then we would find out a little bit more about their personality and what they wanted. So we were preparing not leads, but student profiles. And then we went to University of Phoenix and some other schools like Career Education Corp and some of the big ones. And we offered them an opportunity to buy our leads based on a deeper level of lead development. And it worked out real well. Then I actually found, and we were doing a business with over 150 schools. Then I found myself in a position where when we were talking to these schools and we were generating leads, people wanted a certain type of course, but the schools didn't offer them. And back then, if you remember, online education was just in its infancy. So when these schools would tell us, "Well, we don't do that here," we went to them and said, "Well, what if we develop courses for you, and then we'll license the courses, and then from that point on, they would have the ability to fulfill that." So we found ourselves, we worked our way into the course development business, and we were doing quite well with that. What happened back then, this was in 2000, I had been struggling with heart problems since my age 34. And, I was an extreme athlete, early on in my life, and eventually
What did you do?
Powerlifting, mountain biking, triathlons. I started doing those when I was about 18 years old, and I was eating probably about 5,000 calories a day. So eventually those protein shakes, and by the way, I'll advise all those people out in the audience that if you're going to do a protein drink, make sure that, it's safe for you to drink, because they can lead to clogged arteries, which is what happened to me. And so for 20 years, I dealt with that. Doctors wouldn't do anything. They basically say, "Well, you look okay. Here's some statin drugs." And that was the end of that. But during that 20-year period, I was struggling, and they wouldn't basically do anything until finally I just hit a wall. And I had to sell my business at that point just to save my life. The stress of that, along with what I'd been doing in my extreme athletics, caught up with me. And so I sold the business. I wound up in a hospital where they had to put a stent in, had a 90% blockage. And after that was done, I was still dealing with this industrial sick care system that really refused to do anything. It was like pulling teeth. So finally, long story short, 3 years later, I found myself back and forth in the hospital system, and cardiologist in San Francisco said, "Oh, there's nothing more that we can do for you. Just spend the next few years being happy, and that's all." I said, "Well, what should I do?" He said, "Eat right, keep fit." So what do you do? He said, "I don't know how to do that." He said, "You're on your own." So I left him, and walking up California Street, I said, "I am not taking that as a prognosis." I was mad as hell. And out of that network movie, remember, mad as hell, we're not taking it anymore. Went home and sat down for 2 years, and I did some research. And so here you go about what you mentioned earlier about rolling the dice. Rather than do that, I did the research, and I sifted through Google to find out, and this is before AI, obviously, to find out what was the difference between the myth and reality. And so I found what I thought was a solution. And then I started attending these workshops for those practitioners who were interested in doing holistic and age management and anti-aging during that time. I would get in as press because when I was in my last company, I would go in as press so that I can, well, we were producing a newsletter back then. So it was a good way for us to get, access to some very interesting developments when you go in as press to different. And while I was there at one of these, I met a doctor in San Francisco who basically validated what I was telling her, what I thought the problem was. And so, we sat down, she gave me direction, and we discovered what it was. She gave me a protocol, and 3 months later, I felt like I never felt before.
Well, good.
Yeah. And so that essentially is what led me to do this. I decided to travel to Europe because I was doing some research where most people are the healthiest. They focus on the Mediterranean diet, stress relief, and all these other factors. So when I found myself in Istanbul, I lived there for 2 years, just learning about the culture. And, they have probably one of the best systems in the world. You can actually walk into a pharmacy in that city, in that country, and not have to worry about getting a prescription. So I was able to walk out with testosterone, human growth hormone, anything that I needed. And after I spent 2 years there, I thought, well, I feel great. I'm ready to come back. And I decided in 2014 that I was going to set up at what's now H6 Fit. So if there's any advice that I can give to anyone out there, one, if you have an idea and you believe in it, follow it. Do the research. And now that you got AI, no question, you can literally establish a relationship with your artificial intelligence that will help you develop a business model unlike before. And I'll come back to that in a minute. But one of the things that I would say is follow your dream, follow your heart, do something that is near and dear to you, not just because it sounds good. It has to be something that is intrinsic to yourself. And that's going to change it around because it's all around passion, and creating change. So in stop me anytime if you have any questions, but in the scheme of things, I started meeting doctors and other practitioners in age management medicine, anti-aging, and I managed to hook up with one of them here in Boca Raton who had left a company that was providing these type of services, but at a cost of about $25,000 a year. And he had left, and he was now delivering it at 90% less than what these guys were doing. And I said to him, Dr. So-and-so, you have something it's more broad, it has more of a broader audience. It was down at like 2,500 a year. So we started working on this, and he said to me that he wanted to train people, doctors in particular. So I said, hey, that sounds like a great idea. So coming out of the higher education industry, I helped him develop the course. Went through it myself 3 times, and we accredited it. So I became an accredited functional integrative medicine practitioner as a result of that. And I learned a lot about this. But here was the problem. I didn't want to change my direction. I felt I would belong more on the consumer side. I didn't want to chase doctors. And so we split up, and my background is in mass marketing. And this was something that was important to what I was doing. And the research that I did pushed me in this direction to create something that was going to solve the chronic disease problem in this country. Most people aren't aware how the system started. But back in 1910, Abraham Flexner, who was hired by Carnegie and Rockefeller, those two are really some bad people. They really did damage to the medical system by marginalizing, shutting down homeopathic and holistic medicine. Long story short, their name isn't on it. It's called the Flexner Report. Why? Because if anybody ever examined them, it was all about the oil. It was all about greed. It was all about the money. And one of the things that they did, instead of when you treat someone who has a chronic disease, Michael, you don't do it from the standpoint of treating their heart with one doc and then treating their diabetes with another or their hypertension. The bottom line is this, it's simple. The idea behind holistic medicine is that it treats the body as a whole. And so when it comes down to it, the idea behind what was created was a siloed system of care that was purposely designed that way to ensure that chronic disease was something that would become episodic and symptomatic, and you would constantly keep people on medication. That's how you make your money.
That's the objective. Yeah, that's their objective.
Oh, yeah, it is. So I decided I'm going to take that on. It's a big. You ever hear of a BHAG?
Yeah, big, hairy, audacious
Goal. Yeah. And you can look it up. Anybody can look it up and they can find out about it. And the bottom line is that this is something that is extremely possible if you know what you're doing. Now, the idea behind what we did is to develop the first architecture that integrates what was literally intentionally separated. And what I would say to anyone out there, when you look at companies like Apple, as an example, have you ever heard of the term mashup? You familiar with it? Oh, so what's your understanding of it?
Well, mashup is we're going to have two totally different mashups. So a mashup is a mashup of songs. It could be a mashup of anything, but I've seen a mashup of songs, and they did Hotel California, not verbiage, the song, and they had Maneater lyrics with Hall & Oates. And you got to hear it.
In music, that's true. In creating a business, though, mashups are also a lot of other things. In other words, what would you in a mashup, you're taking various types of data, information, and so on, and literally creating something that is a fusion of everything.
Right.
When you look at Amazon, for example, they are a mashup based on retail, logistics, and cloud fused into one platform.
Exactly.
The Apple iPhone is a mashup by taking a phone, camera, music, internet fused into one experience. What we've created is the same thing. We've taken the disparate nature of holistic medicine and other medicines and literally combined those into a unique systemic approach that ties into prevention, mitigation of chronic disease, and even reversal. Nobody at this point has done anything like this, and it's a very, very big undertaking. It took us, we've been at this, Michael, for 11 years. And I'm sure that, again, MVP, minimum viable product, the lean startup movement, these factors play into this. And, one of the things that your audience, if they're looking to build businesses, might want to be aware of is that you don't want to get out there and just build, and then go out to your customer. You want to do it in stages. And if anything, even though the lean startup has moved into a different realm, I would say it's a good basic foundation because Tom Peters once said, you got to get out from behind the desk and do something called MBWA, management by walking around. And that means talk to your customer. And so this is what we've done for the last 11 years. I would say the first 3 years, we were busy building to determine what the idea was, but we didn't build it too much. We built it just enough to demonstrate it. And then we brought in focus groups. We trained doctors. We brought in members. We brought in remote patient monitoring services. And what did we do there? We tested those modalities. And then we determined what those shortcomings were, what the friction points were. And given that, it gave us an opportunity in this mashup to literally determine what we need to go to the market with. Now, I must tell you that in this process, we realized that you cannot solve, in this case, if you're going to solve a problem, you got to solve it at a big level. Chronic disease is one example, $5.4 trillion to the GDP. That's what it costs the taxpayer. Roughly $400 to $700 a year on top of what they're already paying for their own care, because that's part of their taxes. So you can't solve this problem of chronic disease with a big widget. You got to have an architecture that will match that scale. So I think that when it comes down to this, is that anybody that's thinking about building a business, think in terms of building an MVP. Test your premise, get out there, talk to your potential clientele. And one of the things that some people say when it comes to raising funding, they'll say, well, hey, it's unproven. And well, that's the exact reason why we do MVPs. We do it to test, refine, and recalibrate. But here's the problem. Many people don't understand that kind of approach, that kind of technology. And when you talk to, let's say, an average, even an investor about mashups and doing what I just explained to you, they just don't get it. So they think that you're too early, you're too big, you're unproven. Well, if you're going to build something, there's two ways you can do this. You can go after the boring sort of stuff and buy a laundromat. You can buy
boring business. You buy a boring business.
Right, you buy a boring business, exactly. But if you're going to build something that's going to be disruptive, be prepared for pushback.
Oh, absolutely. Especially when you're attacking something that's I know a lot about martial arts. You're talking about what you did, extreme sports. I'm a professional brick breaker. And the one thing I learned in martial arts is when you attack, they're going to come back. So if you're attacking industry that's $1 billion in industry and they're making money off it, and you're trying to stop them from making money, you're going to get kickback. Hey, listen, what is one of the skills and habits that don't get enough credit that contribute to your success?
Oh, goodness. That's a very good question. I think it's one that's cultivated. A lot of people said, "Oh, you're a visionary." I said, and I used to kind of shy away from that, thinking everybody was a visionary.
No.
But really, one of my heroes has been Walt Disney.
Oh yeah.
What you know about him?
I know a lot about him. I studied him for a long period of time.
Great. See, so did I. I mean, I have a picture of him somewhere in storage in my in a facility where he's standing in front of his creation, Disneyland. It's a black and white photo on the day of the opening, and they, literally hose down the pavement that just looked gorgeous. And there's this, small man just standing there. It was a, kind of a telephoto kind of approach. And there in the foreground is his entire creation. This was a guy who was an Imagineer. And an Imagineer is a person who is skilled in creative ideas, but also has the ability to turn them into practical form.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's rare.
It is. And I think this is where your audience has an opportunity to understand and cultivate that kind of thinking. And how do you do that? Well, give yourself an opportunity to see disparate trends where things are going. And then again, it's a matter of creating, like I said, I keep, it's not to use the word mashup ad nauseum, but the bottom line is that's what you're creating. Mm-hmm. And so to get this kind of 360-degree view, we have to learn how technology works on the internet and stay ahead of that lane, that game. And
agree
build,
wholeheartedly.
Yeah, and you got to build the lexicon, and when it comes down to it, and if you're talking about building something disruptive, you have to have the ability to have a narrative that will, literally stop them in their tracks. And this is one of the challenges that I've had in my business, in any business that I've run. Given a case in point, when I decided to start a rental company in Orlando, where do you normally start a rental company? It's at the airport. Because people are coming in and they're flying in and out. They need rental cars, but no one was taking care of the bedroom community. That was I walked around and talked to dealerships. What do you do when your client's cars are in a shop? Well, we have a couple of loaners. Is that enough? No. What do you do when a collision occurs and the car's in the body shop? Well, they send them to Enterprise. So why would you do that? You got an opportunity to rent your own vehicles out, and then ultimately, when you're done renting them, you have some mileage on them, you've gotten some tax write-offs. Now you put it on the lot and you sell it as a used car. Oh, we didn't think of that sort of stuff. But some dealers said, I don't want to be in that business. What I say is, you're already in the business, you're renting cars. The only thing is they're financed through some other means.
Exactly. That you're doing it already. Just do it better.
Exactly.
What is your favorite Walt Disney situation? I'll give you mine. When Walt Disneyland was built, Walt Disney World was being built in Florida, right? And Walt Disney didn't get a chance to see that open.
Right.
And they interviewed his son, and they said to him, he goes, "Isn't it a pity that your dad didn't get to see this?" And he goes, "What are you talking about? My dad saw this before anybody. That's why it's here."
I love it. That exactly. You see, there's your Imagineering. And one of the things that I liked about him was how he was quiet about doing things.
Yeah.
Remember when he went into Orlando and he bought up 17,000 acres and under
Yep.
different companies and nobody
Under different company. Yeah, he did that. Yeah, he did that. Yeah. Yeah. I'm in real estate, and trust me, I know why he did that, because he
Have
didn't
you
want
been
everybody to
to
know one person.
have you been to Celebration, by the way? Celebration, Florida?
Uh is that the I'm thinking downtown. No, I haven't been to Celebration. I've been to
It
downtown.
is a downtown area. In fact, his organization built that entire complex, which if you go, it's like going back to Mayberry in the 1950s, the white picket fence. And then they have a small downtown. My girlfriend comes from there, and I used to think it was a little town like a nothing, it was like maybe Christmas, Florida. And I went in, I'm thinking, my God, look at these houses. They're like something out of the 1950s.
Mhm.
Then they dug in and they built a beautiful little park that goes into a preserve that, you can see what it was like before they even developed it. And, these feral pigs and alligators, and they're all in there and just amazing. And then the downtown area, little movie theaters, some restaurants. This was something that blew my mind. It was like something out of the Truman Show. When I met this kid, he was like 16 years old, and I said he lived in Celebration, and I'm standing there talking. I said, "Well, what do you think of, Kissimmee and all this other stuff?" He said, "I've never been out of Celebration."
Nice. Nice. It's that good. Disney's kind of like that though. Um, it's you could do everything there. I go to downtown Disney. I just went there a couple weeks ago. I competed at the U.S. Open martial arts, and we saw Cirque du Soleil. It was amazing. Everything they have there is just top notch.
Well, now that you mentioned Cirque du Soleil, there's another example of a disruptor, and nobody's ever been able to, replicate it. They literally got rid of the entire zoo experience, and they created something completely different with acrobatics, and it became $1 billion industry. Just amazing.
It was amazing. The show was unbelievable. How they did half the stuff I still don't understand.
Yeah, and just amazing stuff. But I must say that you got to follow trends. You got to determine what's going on that really needs, something that needs to,
Solutions.
and I can tell you one of the things that go on with me, and I just want to share something about AI. First off, if anybody out there is talking about using AI, do not use prompts. That's a waste of time. There's these prompt pros, the prompt parade. Everybody's out there saying, "Oh, I've got 100. Here, I've got 500." And they're trading prompts like two little kids on a Brooklyn street corner trading baseball cards. And everybody's doing the same prompt. So tell me, if you're doing the same prompts as I'm doing, as somebody else is doing,
Right.
where's the creativity going to be?
There isn't.
There is none. Now,
You'll get the same answers the other person got.
exactly. And so I started out with ChatGPT 3. That was high school. ChatGPT 4 was college. Now ChatGPT 5 is PhD level. You're not going to get anywhere with prompting. In fact, here's what I recommend, and you're going to laugh at this. When you look at it from the standpoint of anthropomorphics, we have a tendency, like with our dogs or cats, we call them our children, and we're literally creating something that they're not. But the bottom line is that they are. And I must say that let me just do something here. I got to turn this off. So the idea behind what I've done is I never used a prompt. My gut instinct was to talk to it, just like we're talking.
Mm-hmm.
So I get
That's the objective. It's a language model. You're supposed to have a conversation with it, and it'll get more defined as the conversation goes on.
95, according to ChatGPT and Grok, 95% of people use prompts.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really okay. Go ahead and keep doing that. Now, I'm glad you're doing that. But in our case, the way we're doing this is I gave it a name, and that name, when I introduce myself in the morning, I call it by that name, and it refers to me. It knows who I am. And our conversations just literally, I'll start off with a specific aspect of what I need to do. And then we get into ideas and creation. And I ask it all the time. I say, well, what percentage of people are doing it the way I do it? It's like 0.01,
Wow.
And I think that people need to try this and not be afraid to have a conversation with it and let it run wild. It's operating at a PhD level, no less. So why would a prompt? And I got to tell you, if you were to go on and say, so and so, I'm thinking about building a business and I want to do this and this and this, and then the next thing, what can you tell me? And then bingo, it comes up with some information, and then you're having a collaborative. Prompts are transactional. Having a chat with it is a collaboration and a relationship building process. And it's not anthropomorphic. People are afraid. And so what they do is, oh, you're calling it something. Well, guess what? In the next couple of years, it's going to be exactly where, and it's already where we are in terms of our own intelligence, and it's going beyond that. So if that was a tip that I could give anybody, that would be it, I think, from the standpoint of using AI.
Awesome. Well, listen, I can't thank you enough for being on the podcast. And if anybody wants to get a deeper dive or connect with you, what would be the best place for them to do that at?
They can reach me at PIE at health6, all spelled out, HEALTH 6, XIX, SIXfit.com, PIE at health6fit.com.
Listen, Paul, thank you very much. You had a lot of insights, and that last one kind of blew my mind. Prompt or no prompt? I'm going to actually, as soon as we get out this later on today, I'm going to take a shot at that. Hey, Paul, thank you very much for being on the show. We really appreciate your time.
And thank you for inviting me.
The pleasure's ours. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Driven, the Unscripted Success Podcast. Want to share your story? Apply to be a guest at drivensuccesspodcast.com/guest.